All right, we want to welcome everybody to our Woodlake 12-step education. We want to tell everybody that we thank y'all for tuning in. What we're going to do today, we're going to go through some basics of some 12-step education. You know, in this time and day that we're in with everything that's going on, one of the things I always stress when it comes to 12 steps, the fellowship, and AA in general, is a lot of people rely heavily on the fellowship. And a lot of people think that by just going to meetings, that's enough. And as we all know, what's going on today with the sickness and stuff, a lot of the meetings have been shut down. The fellowship's been shut down. We're doing a lot of it online. And so now I think more than ever, it's important to really utilize the full program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the steps. It's from the steps that I gained the power. It's not from sitting in a meeting. And as we're going through some of the things today, what we're finding out is sometimes I don't have access to the fellowship. But what I always have access to is the 12 steps and the power that comes from the steps. And I have access to that power 24/7, 365 days a year. So again, more than ever, we're going to stress the program, which is the steps, and the support I get from the fellowship. Now, over the years, what I have learned by doing this, there's three things that are going to be critical in this, and three things that you have to get across to a person. And to get those things across to a person, that person has to be willing to listen, not hear, but listen. And when a person, look, for years, before I got into the program, I heard everything people said to me. My hearing was very good, but I've seldom listened to anybody except me. And there's a difference between hearing and listening. When somebody hears something, it goes in this ear and it goes right out of this ear. And you never retain much information. But when somebody actually listens, it goes in this ear, it gets caught up in here, and you don't have to repeat it over and over and over. And when somebody was talking about something I really wanted to know about, I would listen. And so the steps, the book, the program, you have to really, really, really be interested in this, and you have to really, really want to get this information, because without the correct information, it's hard, it's almost impossible to take the steps and tap into this power. Now, the three things that we're gonna really stress and try to get across to you. We're gonna stress the problem, the solution, and a plan of action. Now, those three things, problem, solution, plan of action. If you take those three things and you apply them to any problem, you can solve that problem. And I'll give you an example. Cancer. Cancer is a problem in our society today. And a lot of people think the reason they haven't come up with a solution to the problem of cancer is because the researchers don't understand the solution yet, which isn't true. Once the researchers identify the problem, really identify the problem, a solution probably already exists, and then they can come up with a treatment plan that you could take that would get you out of the problem into the solution. So, basic problem solving. Problem, solution, plan of action. Now, how many of us alcoholics, drug addicts, we come into treatment centers, we come into the rooms of 12-step fellowships, and we have no idea what our problem actually is. So therefore, we try to come up with a bunch of cockamamie-ass solutions to a problem that we really don't understand. How many of y'all have tried something like this? How many of y'all have tried changing the amount? How many of you have tried to change the days you use? How many of y'all have tried to change your friends, your phone number, your work, your move? We try all these things and we burn up a lot of energy foolishly trying to solve a problem that we really don't understand. Now, if moving, changing friends, changing jobs, using different things, using less, using more, would actually solve the problem, we would have in Alcoholics Anonymous a hell of a success rate. But it doesn't change anything, okay? Consequences. How many of you have ever said, well, you know, if I ever lose my job, if I ever lose my family, if I ever get in legal trouble, I'm done. And you lost your family, you lost your job, you got in legal trouble, and the only thing that you could think about was the next one. So identifying the problem and really being able to see the problem and take the problem, internalize it, that's the taproot, that's the foundation of the whole society called Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, there's two things that we're going to try to get across to you when it comes to the problem. And the two things, one's physical and one is mental. Now, the physical part that they talk about, they refer to it in the big book as an allergy, okay? Now, the very first time that it was suggested to me that I had an allergy to drugs and alcohol, my first thought was, well, the hell I do. Because when I use, I don't break out in hives and rashes. See, I don't break out on the outside. See, when I use, I break out on the inside. And then, as most of us know, we try to break in some other things. Now, the physical part of this, okay? If you take step one, and you take step one, and what we try to do is identify step one as the problem. And the problem is twofold. Part of the problem centers in the body, that's physical, and part of the problem centers in the mind, that's mental. Now, we're going to talk about the first part. We're going to talk about the physical part. Because if you have this physical aspect of this disease, that's why they say once alcoholic, always alcoholic. Now, the physical allergies, that's what we're going to talk about right now. An allergy is an abnormal reaction to any chemical, food, or substance. If someone was allergic to strawberries, and every time they ate a strawberry, they would break out in hives and rashes. The indicator that would tell, hey, you have an allergy to strawberries, is the hives and the rashes. Every allergy has an indicator that tells you got the shit or you don't. Now, if a person, every time they ate a strawberry, broke out in hives and rashes, a person would say, well, I'm going to quit eating strawberries. Now, let's say that person who's allergic to strawberries hadn't had a strawberry, anything strawberry related, for 5 years. And they go to a party one night, somebody has a strawberry shortcake, and they say, hey, I really want some of that strawberry shortcake. And you know, I hadn't had any in 5 years. I think I would be okay. What would happen if that person ate a piece of strawberry shortcake 5 years from now? The same exact thing. They would set off the allergy. The allergy would produce the hives and the rashes, and the same thing would happen. Let's say this person moved up to Minnesota, and they've been up in Minnesota for 2 or 3 years, and they got some new friends, and they meet a bunch of new people, and they go to a party one night, and they have some strawberry jello, and somebody says, hey, you want some strawberry jello? And they say, well, you know, I'm up here in Minnesota, I'm with some new people, and I hadn't had any in a couple of years. I think it'd be safe for me to eat some strawberry jello. So what would happen if they ate strawberry jello with new friends? They've moved, and they hadn't had any in a couple of years. The same exact thing. So moving, changing friends, changing this, changing that will do nothing to attack the allergy. Now, the allergy that I have, every time that I pick up the first one, whether it's liquid, powder, pill, rock, it doesn't matter. Every time that I pick up the first one and I dump it into my body, the way I know I have that allergy produces a physical craving. My body takes over, and my body starts to tell my mind what to do, which is go get some more. Now, every time I put that first one in, the end result is I end up on a well-known spree. Now, how many of us have come up off of one of these bad sprees where we've lost our job, our car, we've gotten legal trouble, we're sitting in a jail cell, we're being threatened by all kinds of things, and our mind says, I'm done. I will never, ever, ever pick up that shit again. Now, at that point in time, I promise you, you mean it. But what happens is you start living in your own skin sober, and that's miserable too. So you start a little buildup emotionally. And something in the mind called the obsession, we're going to talk about that in just a minute, tells you, boy, you know, you sure are feeling bad down here. I know what would make you feel better. The first one. And in your mind, you say, I'm just going to do 1 or 2 just to get the booger bears off my ass so I can feel a little better. So the mind gives you permission to put the first one back in. And once you put the first one back in, you set the allergy off. It becomes physical again. The allergy produces the craving, and now the body's telling the mind what to do, and you end up back on a well-known spree. Now, in the big book, and we're going to get in this in just a minute, it tells me that this little cycle, okay, I build up, I put the first one in, I start. I go through this process, I come up off a bad spree, I quit. I build up again, the obsession makes me start again, and I keep doing this. And in the big book, they say this is repeated over and over and over and over. Now, the physical part of this thing, we can't do anything about that. The physical part, as of today, medical, science, nothing can be done about the allergy. Now, I haven't put the first one in over 19 years and some months. But if I left here today and I put the first one back in, this thing right here that's been lying dormant for 19 years and some months would kick off again. It would produce a craving, and Baton Rouge and surrounding communities better watch out, because I would be on a well-known spree. And when I came up for air, I would say, how in the hell did I ever get started again? Now, the physical allergy, all of this would be academic, from the first one all the way through the spree, if I never put the first one in. And the reason I keep repeating the act of the first one is because of the obsession. So, have an obsession. I can't stay stopped. And I have an allergy of the body. Every time I start, I have no control over how much I'm going to use. So if you take these two things and you combine obsession coupled with allergy, these two things render me powerless. Now, I want you to turn your big books to page XXB in 3 eyes. You have a 4th edition or older, it's XXV in 3 eyes. So XXV in 3 eyes. If I told you XXIV, you'd already be there. The way you're going to know you're there, XXV in 3 eyes. The way you're going to know you're there, the first paragraph down is going to start out with "we believe" and "so suggested." That's how you'll know you're there. Okay. When you study the big book, which is what we're going to do, okay? A couple of things that you have to know about the big book, okay? And some things that make this thing very simple to understand. If you're new at this and you're just coming in, okay, if you picked up this big book and you tried to decipher it on your own, it would be like being in kindergarten. The teacher hands you a book of algebra written in Chinese and tells you you're going to have a test next week. You would feel sort of hopeless and helpless, and there wouldn't be a lot of reason to try to study it. Now, if she told you, look, this is a book of algebra written in Chinese arithmetic, and I have one of the best interpreters in math and Chinese that are going to decipher this for you and get you ready to go, would it give you just a little bit more hope and actually want to do something? Now, the test that we're going to be giving you is, do you want to live again? Not exist, because that sucks, but live again. And that's the test. Now, your interpreter, who knows a little bit about algebra and Chinese arithmetic, just joking, when it comes to this big book, I think I've got a lot of expertise when it comes to this book and the steps. When somebody asks you to open your big book up, what we do is, since this is a textbook, this is the textbook of Alcoholics Anonymous, what we're going to do is we're going to study this book, because that's what textbooks are meant to be done with, study, not read. See, if this was a novel, say, Gone with the Wind, you wouldn't need me. You could read it and interpret it yourself and paint a little picture up here of what that book's about, because it's a novel. But this isn't a novel, it's a textbook. Now, a couple of things you want to know about this textbook. The directions for the 12 steps are in the first 103 pages of the book. After page 103, there are no more directions for the 12 steps. Now, after page 103, they have some other stuff in the book. They got some stories back here. They got some chapters to the family afterwards, the wives, the employers. But it's not directions for the steps. The first 103 pages are the directions, precise and clear cut on how to take the steps. Now, again, all this crap in the back, what it is, it's crap. Now, is it good crap? It is, but it is crap. The first 103 pages of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the program or the directions on how to take the steps. Okay, First paragraph on page XXV and 3 eyes. It says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. Now, an allergy is an abnormal reaction to any chemical, food, or substance. Now, a normal reaction to a drug like alcohol. The first thing you have to sort of understand about what's an abnormal reaction is, first you have to understand what a normal reaction is. Now, a normal reaction to a drug like alcohol, the average normal temperate drinker who doesn't have the allergy, what a lot of them do, I have a sister. If she took a mixed drink and she drank it, she would have a sense of being out of control. She would get dizzy. She would get nauseated. Now, that's a normal reaction to a drug called alcohol. Now, when I put alcohol in my system, I had the complete reaction. I didn't get dizzy. I didn't have a sense of being out of control. I actually had a sense of being in control. I didn't get dizzy. It sort of got me right on point. And if I did feel nauseated, what I would do is take another one and put it right on top of it real quick to keep them all down. I ran around with a bunch of abnormal drinkers and users for about 26 years. So abnormal using became pretty normal to me. If you were a normal person, I didn't really want to associate with you. I really didn't want to have a lot to do with you. And I thought if you were a normal, average temperate user, that you were actually an abnormal. You know, how many of us abnormal users look at normal people and we go, what the hell is wrong with them? Normal people look at us abnormal users and they say the same thing. What the hell is wrong with them? Now, how many of y'all have ever had a normal drinker, a normal person, come up to you and go, man, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? And you go, nothing. What's wrong with you? And so in order to understand what abnormal is, the first thing you have to be able to decipher is what's normal. Now, this allergy, an allergy again is an abnormal reaction to any chemical, food, or substance. Now, let's keep reading. It says the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Now, average, normal, temperate users, whatever the hell that is, they don't have the allergy. So what they can do is put one, maybe two into their body, and their body doesn't physically start to crave it. That's an average, normal, temperate reaction to using. Now, how many of us look at an average, normal, temperate drinker, user, who just wants to do one or two, and we go, that's not normal. Because what we do as abnormal users, every time we put the first one in us, we set this allergy off, the craving takes over, the body's telling the mind what to do, and what we want more than anything else is another one. Now, the more that I use, the more that my body craves. And the more my body craves, the more I have to put in. Now, it's sort of like this. Every time I put the first one in, that equals 1 unit of craving. And that 1 unit of craving physically makes my body want the second. So when I put the second one in, the craving doubles, which makes my body want the third one. So I put the third one in, the craving triples. So the more that I use, the more my body actually craves. Now, again, all that would be academic if I never put the first one in. All right, let's get back in the book. It said the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types. Again, you have to know if you're an allergic type or you're not. And there's one thing that qualifies me as an allergic type. Do I have the allergy? And the way I know I have the allergy is every time I put the first one in, the allergy sets off craving. So the craving tells me I'm an allergic type. Now, listen to what the book says about these allergic types. It says these allergic types can never, and I don't know about you, but my book says never, and I don't have a misprint. I can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. Now, we're going to talk about this any form at all stuff. But before we do, I want you to realize what it said. It says I can never safely use. Now, I can use, I just can't use safely. And safely means one, maybe two. And the reason I can't do one or two is because I have an allergy of the body. And the allergy of the body will always be with me. That's why it says I can never safely use. Now, we're going to talk about the alcohol in any form and all stuff. And a lot of controversy comes up here, but I'm going to make it just as plain and simple, where the controversy will only be in your head. The alcoholic that I am, I can't use any form of alcohol, liquid, powder, pill, rock, any form. Because anytime I put any form into my system, set off the allergy, produces the craving, and I end up on a spree. Now, I've heard this from a lot of opiate addicts. I don't drink. And I tell them, well, I don't either anymore. but we go a little further, and this is what I asked them. I said, if I dropped you off on a deserted island for 6 months, and I left you 6 months worth of food, your favorite food, and a case of Jack Daniels, unopened, with every bottle in it with the seal still on it. I came to pick you up in 6 months. Quite naturally, all the food would be gone. Now, with every bottle, with the seal still on it, and the case of Jack Daniels be there unopened. And every time I ask that question, it's usually no. Because what happens is when they get irritable, restless, and discontented enough up here, this tells them, hey, you need some relief. And they see that case of Jack Daniels sitting there, and they put the first one in them, and when they do, it set the allergy off, it produces the craving, and now the body's telling the mind what to do. So, what you got to ask yourself, anytime you put any form in you, do you want more? All right, back in the book. It says these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. Once having formed a habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Now, what that means is this. How many of us come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous? We come into treatment centers, we come into drug courts, and we got more problems than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Our life is unmanageable. Our problems are piling up on us.
Manageable, Randy.
Yeah.
Piling problems on top of problems on top of problems. And every time we present it with a problem, our solution is to get some relief. So we put the first one back in, we put the allergy up, we go on a spree, and we come up with more problems.
Go back to the
Just adding problems on top of problems on top of problems. Now, I want you to listen to what we're fixing to read, okay? Now, all this time we've been talking about the physical part, okay? Now, before we read any further in the big book, we're gonna stress a little bit more about the physical factor, right? I think one of the most important things in understanding the problem and understanding the difference between allergy and obsession is this. Because I can remember when I first came in to a 12-step based treatment center, and they started talking to me about allergy and craving. Okay, and what I got to
you just click back on the link in the email that they sent
between a craving and an obsession. Okay. Hey, Josh, I can hear y'all. Y'all try to be quiet, okay? So the difference between
with audio
and an obsession is this, okay? Craving is physical. I cannot crave it unless I actually put it in my body. Obsession.
Yep, there it is. Thank you, Josh.
Now,
Hey, Bob.
Excuse me.
everybody on the other side of this this computer, can y'all please hold it down because y'all are coming back into the audio. So if you're listening, please be quiet. Okay, so the difference between craving and obsession. Craving is physical, obsession is mental. Now, the physical craving. The only way I can set it off is by putting the first one in. How many of y'all have ever said this? You've been dry for a week, 2 weeks. You're fighting it. You're miserable as hell. And you say, "Oh, I sure am craving a drink," which is impossible. You haven't had anything in a week or two. You're not craving it. What you're doing is only thinking about it. Now, I can crave it. If this obsession overrules everything and put the first one in. Now, once I put the first one in again, then it becomes physical, and I am craving another. But the act of the first drink, the act of the first hit, is not physical, it's mental. And you got to be able to differentiate the difference between a craving and an obsession, okay? Now, we've been talking a lot about the physical allergy, okay? Now, I'm alcoholic. There's not a doubt in my mind. Because anytime I pick up any form of alcohol and put it into my system, I set this allergy up. Now, I ask this question a lot. And when this was sort of explained to me early on, it's like a light bulb went off. What makes a person alcoholic? And what makes a person powerless? There's two different things. Now, if you have the obsession, you can't keep putting the first one in. And you take the obsession and you couple it with the allergy. These two things render you powerless. Now, I haven't had the first one in 19 years and some months because I don't have this anymore. The obsession's been removed, but I'm still alcoholic. And the reason I'm still alcoholic is I still have the allergy. That's what makes me alcoholic. And it's important that you understand that. And that's why they tell us once alcoholic, always alcoholic. Now, if I take this allergy and I couple it with the obsession, that's what renders me powerless. Now, the physical allergy. How many of us have, before we really understood some of this, we thought, if I stay sober, and we put, like we're scientists, we put an expiration date up there. Like, if I stay sober for a year, I think I can smoke crack like a gentleman then. Or if I stay sober for 6 months, I think I can drink again. Or, you know, I hadn't shot any heroin in, a couple of months. I think I can eat a couple of Lortabs. And we come up with all of this crap in our head that we make up that has no validity, that makes no sense to nobody but us. Now, this right here, this obsession of the mind, coupled with the allergy of the body, is what renders me powerless. What makes me alcoholic is the allergy. I'm an alcoholic. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. I will be an alcoholic till they put dirt on me. I can live safely with the allergy if I don't have the obsession. But if I have the obsession, this is going to make sure I continue to put the first one in, and the allergy is going to ensure I destroy myself in the process. But if I can do something over here, the allergy actually becomes a moot point. I can live with the allergy if I don't have the obsession. Now, how many of us in here, we started out, when we first started using, as a normal, average, temperate user? A lot of people who make it into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous started out their careers, their drinking careers, using careers, as average, normal, temperate drinkers, users. A lot of us, me, I never was an average, normal, temperate drinker. I was born with the allergy. Because the very first time, at age 12, 13, I snapped open a Budweiser and put it in my system. I set that allergy off, it produced a craving, and I ended up on the spree from day one. Now, whether you started out as an alcoholic or you started out as an average temperate drinker, it really doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. What matters is not how the jackass got in the ditch, but how we gonna get him out. Now, how many of y'all in here, when you first started, you were an average, normal, temperate user? The allergy wasn't rearing its ugly head at that point. So you could do 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, put the shit down and go on about your business for a couple of weeks until the next little party, graduation, and you do it again. And everything went along fine until one day you crossed the line. You went from normal, average, temperate user to alcoholic. You joined us in the class. Now, can someone go from an average, normal, temperate user to alcoholic? You better believe it. Can somebody go from alcoholic back to average, normal, temperate drinker? No, not as of today. Science has not accomplished that yet. Now, it's sort of like this, okay? I used the pickle and the cucumber syndrome. Let's say you started out as an average, normal, temperate drinker. You started out as a cucumber. Now, what happens when a cucumber is immersed in a bunch of chemicals? It becomes pickle. Now, how many of y'all started out as a cucumber, an average, normal, temperate user? You immersed yourself in a bunch of chemicals over a lot of years, and you became pickled. Now, once you got pickled, can you ever go back to being a cucumber? Never. Now, us ones that were born pickled, we don't know what it's like to be a cucumber. So the ones of us who were born alcoholic, we never in the back of our mind think we can go back to being an average, normal, temperate user, because we never were. And one of the biggest fallacies, the biggest myths that a lot of y'all have that cross the line, you go from cucumber to pickle, is that you can go back from being pickled to being a cucumber one day. And I'm telling you, the day will never come. You actually are going to get worse. Now, one last thing about the allergy, and I think we made that point this morning. And we're going to try to move on to the crux of the problem, which is the obsession. Now, the allergy, over any considerable period of time, I get worse, never better. Now, the first time I heard that, I go, well, what's the point? What's the point of all this shit then? What they mean is this. I haven't had a drink or a drug in 19 years and some months. And the whole time I've been sober, the allergy has actually been getting worse. So what that means is, if today, for some ungodly reason, I was to pick up the first one and put in me, I would not pick up where I left off 19 years and some months ago. I would pick up like I had been using the whole time. Because the whole time I've been sober, the allergy's been actually getting worse. That's why any alcoholic with any length of sobriety, and when I mean length, I'm talking years and more. Any alcoholic who's at any length of sobriety, who's picked back up, will always tell you it gets worse, never better. And anybody who's ever had any length of sobriety, from the time they pick the first one up until it ends again, it doesn't take long. They fall off like a ski jump. The whole time they've been sober, the allergy's been getting worse. Now, if I can't do anything about the allergy, the good news that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous carries to me is we're going to do all our work in the mind. And that's actually a good thing, because the mental obsession, the mind, that's the crux of the problem. See, if I didn't have this obsession to use, I would never put the first one in, and I would never set off the allergy. I would never produce the craving. I'd never go on a spree, and shit will start to get better for me. Now, I want you to remember back to the person who has an allergy to strawberries. Why can a person who has an allergy to strawberries easily put that shit down and never pick it back up the rest of their life? Because see, the person who has an allergy to strawberries doesn't have an obsession to eat strawberries. That's why they can put the shit down without any effort, thought on their part, and never pick it up. Tricky part of this thing with us alcoholics, the allergy that we have, we've developed something over here called an obsession of the mind. Now, an obsession is a thought or an idea that overrules everything. One of the ways that I get people to determine whether they have the obsession or not is this way. I want you to think of one thing that's nearest and dearest to you. I mean, you would give your life for it. And a lot of times people say, well, my kids, my mom, my daddy, my dog. See, we all have something that if we had to choose between us living and them living, we would let them live and we would die. Now, that one thing that is nearest and dearest to you, I want you to think about it. I want you to think about it long and hard. Now, when the obsession to use with you kicks in, that thing that's nearest and dearest to you Is it like it doesn't exist anymore? Now, for this thing to do that to your loved ones, that's got to be a powerful thing. Because when the obsession kicks in with an alcohol, nothing gets in their way. And that obsession tells them to put the first one in. Now, how many of y'all, the obsession has made you choose using over your own freedom? How many of y'all, the obsession has made you choose drugs and alcohol over your children? How many of y'all, the obsession has made you choose between your parents and drugs? How many of y'all, the obsession has made you choose drugs and alcohol over everything? God, money, family, everything, freedom, everything. That's how powerful the obsession is. Now, I can remember sitting in a treatment center and they're explaining this to me. And they kept going back to this obsession and how powerful it was. And I started putting some things in my own life in there. How many times had my mother just cried, begged, please don't do that anymore. And I would say, with everything I had, Mama, I promise you I won't do that again. And within a couple of hours, maybe a day, this thing's kicking in. I'm irritable, I'm restless, I'm discontented, and everything I promised my mama went out the window, and I reached over and I put one in. Because what this obsession kept telling me was, hey, it's going to be different this time because of mama. And it was different, because when I put the first one in, it was worse. Consequences will not make an alcoholic like me quit entirely. What consequences do, legal, financial, family, do to a person like me is slow me down a little bit. They never make me stop entirely. Now, I want you to think about it. How many of y'all have ever said, if I ever go to jail, if I ever lose my kids, if I ever lose my job, if I ever lose my car, I'm done. And all those things have happened in rapid succession, and all you want to do is use more. The obsession is the crux of the problem. Now, this obsession that we're talking about, where it centers between this ear and this ear. And that's what we're going to start talking about. Now, I think what we're going to do right now, we're going to give everybody a 10-minute break. Okay? What 10 minutes means, watch this shit, is 10 minutes. It doesn't mean 11 or 12 or 15. So 10 minutes. We're going to give you time to go to the potty, go smoke you about 12 cigarettes, just hotbox the shit out of them. And what we're going to do in 10 minutes is we're going to get going again. So y'all get up, stretch your legs, take your little break, get your nicotine fix. 10 minutes, we're going to get going again. Okay? All right, we want to welcome everybody back for the second session. We're going to try to go probably about 30 minutes, another 40 minutes, and then we're going to break again. So just to recap a little bit, what we talked about for the most part of the morning is the physical aspect of this thing. And the physical aspect is the allergy. And the way I know I have the allergy is when I put the first one in, I set off the physical craving, the body takes over, and the craving ends up to be called a well-known spree. Now, we're going to get back into the book a little bit. We're going to start talking about the main problem for the alcoholic, which centers in the mind rather than the body. Because again, if I didn't have this thing up here between my ears telling me to put the first one in, I would never put the first one in, and the allergy would actually become a moot point. Now, what is an obsession? An obsession is a thought or an idea that overrules everything. Look, if you're thinking about using, and you take that thought and we get you geared away from that, where you start thinking about something else. It's not an obsession, it's a thought. An obsession is when that thinking turns to obsession and it overrules everything, and I put the first one in. That's how I know it's an obsession. Now, an obsession, again, is a thought or an idea that overrules everything. And the obsession, it's going to center between this ear and this ear, up in this little box, okay? Now, the key to understanding the obsession and how it works. Another thing centers up here in this box between this ear and this ear, and it's called my personality. Now, the personality and the obsession are sort of like this. They're sort of just grown together. Now, what the steps do, the whole process of the steps, okay? Step 12 tells me that. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Now, we're going to get into it in just a second about a spiritual awakening, what it is, what it isn't. Spiritual awakening is nothing more than a personality change. Now, this personality that I'm trying to get changed, what is ingrained in the personality? This obsession. So what takes place is this. When I start taking the steps, like the book says, I have a new personality that starts coming in. And when it does, it starts to push the old one out. Now, somewhere around the couple of month mark, the personality change, it takes hold. And what it has pushed out is my old personality and the obsession. Now, you take me for an example. I have a new personality that has come in and pushed the old one out and the obsession. And every day the personality keeps changing. If I quit doing what I'm supposed to do, which is go to meetings, 10, 11, and 12 every day, the steps, and work with a sponsor, what would happen is this. This old personality and obsession that's way out there, it'll slowly start to stop and start coming backwards. And when it does, it starts to push my new one and the one I've been working on for years out. And if I stay that way long enough, what happens is that old personality and obsession finally goes, boom, and it comes back. So what I do, what millions of people like me do, we work with new alcoholics every day, every day, every day, every day. And we know that if we quit doing what we're supposed to do, the old personality is going to come back with the obsession. And if it does, it's a wrap. And the way we know that is we see newcomers coming back in who have quit doing what they're supposed to do, never started doing what they're supposed to do, and they use again. And we get to see that and see what happens. You know, it's an amazing thing to watch a new personality come in and push an old one out with a person. But if you ever see it, what's even more amazing is to watch the old personality make a U-turn and start coming back and pushing the new personality out. It's amazing, and it's also sad. Okay, so obsession, personality, they're pretty much the same. Now, we read a little bit in the big book. We're going to get back in it right now. We're in the middle of page XXV and 3X. It says frothy emotional appeal. Now, what they mean by frothy emotional appeal. How many of y'all have ever been in front of a judge and he frothily emotionally appealed to you like this? If I see your ass in front of me again, it won't be nice. How many of y'all's children have frothily emotionally appealed to you? Mama, please stop doing drugs. How many of y'all's mothers have frothily emotionally appealed to you? That's what they're talking about. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. Now, frothy emotional appeal. Back in the book, seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideas must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. Now, I want you to go down to the bottom of that same page. It says, men and women drink, essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Look, why do we use? Why did we use? We like the effect. Look, we don't like all the ramifications that come with it. We don't like the way it tastes. We don't like the aftertaste it leaves in our mouth and stuff like that. We use because we like the effect. Now, I've had some people tell me, you know, I like the way a cold beer tastes on a hot day. Well, if that was true, okay, which it's not, because if you ever taste beer, it don't taste very good. How many of y'all have ever said you like the way whiskey tastes? I like the way whiskey tastes on the rocks. Well, let me ask you this question. How many of y'all like the taste of cold mountain spring water on a hot day? How many of y'all have ever sat down and drank a whole case of that shit in one sitting? See, you drink the cold mountain spring water for the taste. We drink the alcohol and we use the drugs for the effect. Look, if you didn't use for the effect, some of you people that are shooting dope, just fill your syringe up with water. See, you wouldn't keep doing that because you don't get any effect from that. So it's important that you know and understand that we use for the effect. I have people tell me all the time, well, I like getting high. Well, who don't? But do you like all the ramifications that come with it? Because every time you put the first one in and start getting high, you set this allergy of the body off. It produces the craving, and we know what happens. Now, let's get back in the book. It says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, it's harmful, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal. Now, I've been told, I've been given a lot of different estimates how many billions of people are in the world. Let's say there's 10 billion people in the world. It says to you, you're the only one that thinks what you're doing is normal. Everybody else that is around you, talks to you, has anything to do with you, looks at you and goes, what the hell is wrong with them? You're the only one that believes what you're doing is normal. It says they are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can experience the sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few hits. Hits which they see others take with impunity. Those others are those normal, average, temperate users. After they have succumbed to the desire again, see what that means is? After you succumb to this obsession, what do? This is what you do. When you succumb to the desire, the obsession, same thing, you reach over and put the first one in. Now, it says after you succumb to this desire, this obsession, as so many do, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, and they emerge remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. Now, when an alcoholic comes up off a bad spree and they make that firm resolution not to do the shit again, that's what us alcoholics call the alcoholic's national anthem. The alcoholic's national anthem is, I will never do that shit again. Now, how many of y'all have said, with everything that you have can muster, and you really mean it, I'll never do that shit again? And you mean it. And within an hour, a day, a week, a month, you're doing it again. And this is why. Because this thing keeps kicking back in, telling you you need some relief, which you probably do because you're doing nothing else recovery-wise, and you put the first one in. Now, when you put the first one in, do you get some relief? Do you get some ease and comfort? Of course you do. But you set this monster off. The allergy produces the craving again. You end up on a spree, and when you come up for air again, you sing the alcoholic's national anthem, I'll never do that shit again. Let's keep reading. We've been talking all morning. We've been talking all these sessions to get to this point. This is repeated over and over. See, obsession, first one, allergy, craving, spree. It says this is repeated over and over and over. Now listen to what they say about that person. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, that's a personality change, there's very little hope for her recovery. Now, the obsession of the mind. Obviously, that's the crux of the problem, where the 12 steps do all their work is in the mind, not the body. Now, let's talk about how an obsession develops and how we sort of play into that. Because look, if the obsession is the crux of the problem, I sort of want to learn all I can about this obsession that's destroying my life. How does somebody form an obsession? Now, this thing you got between your ears, they call it a brain, and it's a marvelous mechanism. But what the brain actually does better than anything else, it records success. And I'll prove it to you. When you were a small child growing up and you were learning to tie your shoe, how many of y'all, you did a bunch of hitting and missing? It took you about 10, 15 times to finally get it right. But the first time you ever got it right, bam. You know what this thing recorded? Success. And the next time you got ready to tie your shoe, you didn't retrieve all those hits and misses. You retrieved that one success. Now, if they ever come out with a new way to tie your shoe, and you were to learn that new way would come in to your personality, your brain, and it would push the old one out. And every time you got ready to tie your shoe, you would use the new way. So what this thing up here records, what it really does better than anything else, it records success. Now, Let's talk about forming an obsession for drugs and alcohol. I don't know about you, but the very first time I ever got good and loaded and high, I put that stuff in me, and this is what I sort of thought. Woohoo! Shit, I done found something here. And what this thing recorded was success, because it changed the way I felt. It made me feel good, and I had no worries. So what I had started to form, I just didn't know it, was an obsession to use. Now, after that, every time I ran up on a problem, see, every time mentally, I would start to get irritable, I'd get restless, and I would get discontented in my own skin. This thing told me, hey, I know how you can feel better. Last time you put that stuff in you, boy, it really did the trick. So early on, when I started having problems, my solution was to put the first one in. And in the early days, it worked, and it worked great. But what started to happen was the allergy got worse, the cravings got worse, the sprees started getting bad and worse. But I really didn't have another solution to when I would build up when I was sober, when I would get irritable, restless, and discontent. I didn't have another solution. Now, this obsession to use, it stayed with me for damn near 27 years. And every time I would get irritable, restless, and discontent, my solution was to put the first one in. Now, in the early days, did it work? Yeah, it worked good. But what happened was, sometime over the years, my solution, putting the first one in, it boomeranged on my ass. And now my solution had become my problem. There lies the crux of the problem. When my solution, drugs and alcohol, boomeranged on my ass and became the problem, I didn't have another solution to take its place. So every time I would get irritable, restless, and discontent, I knew how I could get at least some temporary relief. See, the obsession don't tell you about all that stuff that's going to happen on the spree. It only tells you how you're going to feel after the first one. Now, when my solution, the drugs and alcohol, boomeranged on me, and I didn't have another solution, it took about another 10 years before this putting the first one in quit working too. And you talk about a scary spot for an alcoholic when they don't have a solution and nothing's working. That's normally when an alcoholic like me does one or two things. I either cry out for some help or as the big book says, I take it to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation the best I can. And every alcoholic who's ever recovered knows about taking it to the bitter end. And that's miserable. Now, I want you to stay with me, because this is the part that I think a lot of people, we don't emphasize enough. You take a person like me, you take 3 million of us who have recovered, and that's a low estimate. What's happened to us is this quit working, and when it did, and we got to the bitter end, that's when we cried out and we said, I want some help. I don't need help. I want some help. And when a person wants help, I've never seen it not be laid right in their lap. Now, you take me for an example. This obsession rode me. It dominated me. It told me everything. For 26 years, It told me what job to take, what car to buy, what relationship to get in, where to move, how to dress. It told me everything. It ruled me. And I got to a point where I never thought I would be free of this thing. I thought I was just going to live to the bitter end, and this is the way it was going to be. Now, when I get to the point where I say I want some help, and they start telling me about this obsession and this allergy. Well, I did like a lot of people do. A lot of normal people who really don't understand this, they say, well, why don't you just quit? You know the old Nancy Reagan shit, just say no. So what I said was, well, shit, okay, just don't put the first one in. That's simple. I'm done. What I failed to really realize was that. See, an alcoholic who has the allergy, they get this like that. But what a lot of us never equate is the crux of the problem. So I would try to live in my own skin for a couple of hours, a couple of days, and the obsession would get me every time. Now, when I start to become a little open-minded about some things, like, I don't know shit, you do. I need some help. I want some help. I'll do anything. That's when some things started to change. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous started to come alive. Things that people were saying to me, I'm listening to them. They start to make sense. And one of the things that was told to me early on is if I keep going like I'm going, I'm going to do some things I don't want to do. Lie, cheat, steal, rob, pillage. And if I actually get into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, into the fellowship, get a sponsor and start doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to do some things I don't want to do. So either way, if I stay in the problem, I'm going to do some things I don't want to do. If I come over here into the solution, which we're going to get into, I'm going to do some things I don't want to do. So either way, guess what I'm fixing to do? Some things I do not want to do. Now, a person who really doesn't understand the problem will never be interested in the solution. But a person who really understands the problem, obsession, coupled with allergy, renders me powerless. When a person really understands the problem, the solution falls right in their lap. Now, today, the obsession to use drugs and alcohol is gone. It doesn't exist for me anymore, okay? So without the obsession, I never think about putting the first one in for some ease and comfort. But see, I have a new solution today. I get some ease and comfort from a different source. Say, not from the spirit in a bottle, a pill, or a pipe, but from the real spirit. See, look, I'm alcoholic, and I promise you one thing, I'm going to get some relief, whether it be from the spirit in a bottle, a pill, or a pipe, or from the real spirit. But I'm going to get some ease and comfort. Now, I want you to ask yourself, how have you been getting your ease and comfort? From the first one in the spirit in a bottle, a pill, or a pipe, which is temporary, or from the real spirit, which is sort of permanent. Now, today, do I still get irritable, restless, discontented? Yes, I do. I'm human. The difference now is when I start to get irritable, restless, and discontent, it's sort of like this. I have a new obsession between my ears today. The new obsession tells me to do steps 10, 11, and 12. And when I do 10, 11, and 12, 10, 11, and 12 does the same thing as the first one used to do. It gives me ease. It gives me comfort. But what 10, 11, and 12 doesn't do is set off the allergy, produce the craving, and then end up on a spree. So it's sort of like this. You could say, I have a new obsession today. And when the new obsession to do 10, 11, and 12 kicks in, it overrules everything. You know, the program Alcoholics Anonymous, the solution is actually quite simple once I understand and identify the problem. Now, we're going to close this session with this. We're going to turn our big books to page 37. Now, in the big book, they have a story on page 37. It's about a jaywalker. Now, I can remember coming up off the streets into treatment. I have nothing, and I got this big book, and they want me to read this story and study this story about a jaywalker. And this was my thinking: what the goddamn hell does a jaywalker have to do with me smoking crack? And at the time, I thought it was dumb, I thought it was silly, and I thought it was ridiculous. But over the years, the jaywalker has become, to me, I think, really gets the point across about the obsession. Now, a jaywalker. This is what a jaywalker is. They get a thrill out of running in front of fast-moving vehicles. Now, if you looked at a jaywalker and they told you, hey, you know, I get my kicks by running in front of this damn 18-wheeler, how many of y'all would go? There's something wrong with him. Well, our families look at us like a jaywalker when we tell them, you know, man, I'm sticking needles in my arm, smoking crack all day. I really get a thrill out of that. And our family, those normal people, they look at us like we would look at the jaywalker and they go, what's wrong with him? Now, page 37. The last paragraph on page 37, it says, our behavior, talking about the alcoholic, is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion. Passion, obsession, desire, same thing. Save for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. How many, every time you stick a needle in your arm, a pipe up to your mouth, you drink a fifth of Jack, how many of y'all it's like running in front of a fast-moving vehicle? You don't know what's going to happen. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warning. How many of y'all, when you first started using, you were enjoying yourself and people said, man, you better watch that shit. You better watch that shit. See, those friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him and he's slightly injured several times in succession. How many of y'all are starting to face consequences back to back to back to back? You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he's hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving Woodlake, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. Sort of sounded like some of us, huh? He says, on through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce. See, don't say he wants a divorce. It says his wife gets a divorce. And he's held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. See, we're not talking about the physical ailments, the broken bones. We're talking about that thing that's telling him between his ears to run in front of fast-moving vehicles. Sort of like the obsession you have to put the first one in. He shuts himself up at Woodlake, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a woman would be crazy, wouldn't she? See, how many of us, we read this story and we go, what the hell's wrong with them? That's how normal people look at us. It says, you may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit, if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcoholics have been involved, we've been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? Now, how many of us in here, the obsession has pretty much gotten the best of us, and we're giving you a solution to remove that obsession. Now, next session, we're going to get into the solution, and the solution is only as good as your understanding of the problem. All right, thank y'all. We appreciate y'all tuning in, and next session, we'll get into the